Hello, guys watching. Welcome back to another interview. And as you guys know, this is about cultural expert interviews. And the idea is to really understand from people who are from professional fields on how they're working with culture, how that has influenced their lives. And today, here with me is my great friend, also mentor and cross-cultural specialist, Cheryl Obal. She focuses on particular Italy, Saudi Arabia, UAE, India, and the US. And she also is a corporate business skills facilitator and a cultural leadership skills trainer. So a big warm welcome. And if there's anything you want to add from what I've said, please feel free to also add anything.
Thank you so much for having me, Weirong. It's always a pleasure to see you. And hello also to anyone who's listening. And I think your introduction was complete. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. And just for everybody to know, where are you currently based now?
Right now, my business is based in Vicenza, Italy. It's in the northeast of Italy, about 45 minutes from Venice, but I do work worldwide. I have clients in most of the places that you mentioned, but additional countries as well. So I have a worldwide reach. Now that everything is virtual, yes, I'm able to do a lot of work, through the internet. So I'm hoping face-to-face training will be coming back soon because I think we're all missing it. But in the meantime, yes, everything's been virtual, which actually has allowed me to reach a lot more people in different parts of the world.
100%. It definitely makes sense in terms of reaching more people and working globally, also online, making it possible through that. And also we're kind of face-to-face. So we're simulating that kind of a feeling now, if you guys feel this. In any case, I want to start off, and as today's interview is really about culture, the first question then is, what does culture specifically mean to you?
Well, culture is a broad term that can be applied in many different contexts. Simply put, it's a shared set of values and characteristics and ways of thinking and value systems and principles that's shared by a large group of people. And culture is not only about where you come from, because culture can be influenced by all the different groups that we belong to that sort of teach us values throughout our lives, including your family, your society, your education, your profession, and many other factors. And culture is also used in other terms, other phrases, like I'm sure you've heard corporate culture, or organizational culture, arts and culture. But yeah, so I think we have to be specific as cross-cultural trainers and explain what we're actually talking about. We're not getting into like arts and culture. We're not talking about organizational culture because that has to do with the corporate value system inside a corporation. We're talking about culture on different levels, mostly referred to your culture of origin, but also other, influencing factors throughout our lives that sort of make building blocks and then determine what our value system becomes.
100%. Thank you for that very, very detailed and rich definition of culture. Following from that, I can see that there's so many different levels of perspective that you relate culture to be. But what do you think of, if you had to think of a thought or an experience that kind of changed or influenced or shifted perception of culture, what would you say that was?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's really a turning point. I think it's when you really realize how cultural values influence the way people think. I mean, and how they influence your behavior in very specific situations, and how people can have a completely different viewpoint of how something goes. Two different people can be looking at the same situation, but have two completely different and contrasting interpretations of it. And I think I first became aware of this in my very first professional job when I was 21 and I worked in Japan. So that was really a page turner in my history, let's say, because I got to understand how different, Japanese culture is very different from American culture where I came from. And it's, I mean, exquisite, you know, in their values of humility and respect for others, and just a wonderful, beautiful culture. And I realized in that experience that there's a hierarchy. So in the place I was working, we were a team of 5 Americans, and we could not just individually go and express ourselves to the management of the place that we were working. We were not allowed to do that. We had to communicate through the leader of our group, and that person would take our concerns or our issues or our questions forward to the leader of the group that we were working with. So there was a structure, you know, where I came from in the US. I mean, we are, you know, there's equality, and there's, you know, there's a sense of like everybody has the right to speak out no matter what level you are, right? I mean, anybody can just walk up to the CEO of a company, sit down and express your opinion. So in Japan, that was the first time I experienced the fact that, you know, what I thought was the right way or the way to do things can be vastly different from country to country and culture to culture.
100%. Thank you for sharing that insight. I can see how much experience you've had and some personal insights that you also added. Thank you very much. And next, we're going to the section of career-wise. So as your work is based as a cross-cultural trainer, I want to ask, how did you actually get into this field? What interested you about this?
Okay, so I was an ESL teacher, English as a second language. And at a certain point, I simply fell into this career because I went to work in Microsoft in India in 2011. And as part of my training to work at Microsoft, my title was Culture and Communication Specialist. Even though up until that time, I didn't have any cross-cultural training experience. I had been living in Italy, I had been living abroad, but cross-cultural training as a field, I hadn't really been into until, you know, up until that point. So as a part of the training for that job, we got trained on different methodologies, which we then used in our training of the people we were working with in India. So that's the point where I got educated on cultural detective, Globe Smart, ICS, which is an intercultural conflict styles assessment tool, and IDI, intercultural development inventory. And so through all these tools, the number one thing is to understand your own personal styles and tendencies, but then to be able to use them in your teaching and reference different theories. So the Cultural Detective Program is one of the big educational tools at Microsoft for cross-cultural. And that just opened my mind. I knew that this was the missing link in my career and in my life. And it changed the whole trajectory of my career, because it was at that point I realized this is the information I needed 10 years ago when I started my expat journey and I started living abroad. I wish I had known these philosophies and terminologies and methodologies back when I first started living abroad. It would have helped my whole journey a lot more.
And now fast forward to you being an expert in this field with your work across countries like US, Italy, South Korea, Japan, Thailand, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. What would you say actually is one of the most interesting misconceptions that people have about a certain country?
This is a good question. And I think for this answer, I would like to address the fear factor about living in the Middle East. Okay, so I lived in Saudi Arabia for 4 years, and I worked as a cross-cultural trainer at a university. And it was the most amazing experience of my career. I had the most enriching teaching experiences of my entire career. I had, you know, I feel that when people think about the Middle East, they think, oh, very conservative place, you know, I can't fit in there. There's just a lot of desert and camels. And it's not like that at all. I mean, first of all, it's extremely safe. It's very clean. It's very progressive in the way that they're moving forward towards technology and different sustainable energy for the future. And also the people are absolutely amazing. I mean, from day one in my teaching, I had people treat me in the most exquisite way. Every day asking me how I was doing. Am I settling in okay? Do I need anything? And they were calling me sister. They were treating me like their sister. And then at the end of the first like 3-month batch of courses I did in Saudi Arabia, I had the most lavish gifts from my students that I've ever received from in my whole career. I mean, they were just so full of generosity and so full of warmth that I knew I could work and live effectively in this country. And, you know, I also would like to debunk this whole, the difference between Saudi and the UAE. There's another thing that's going around in the cross-cultural training world right now. I've noticed that in a lot of the training programs, they've lumped together all the countries of the GCC or the Gulf. So Saudi, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, etc. They're all lumped into one bucket. So this is actually not very accurate. So I would suggest to anyone out there who's going to live and work or teach, you know, do cross-cultural training, for anyone who's going to the Middle East, keep in mind that these countries are very different. I mean, you know, there is the underlying, let's say, the common fabric, the baseline values of Islam throughout all the countries. So yes, that's there and that's common. But living, working, and doing business in each of these countries is very, very different. So Saudi is very different from the UAE. The UAE is built on accepting and attracting a lot of foreigners. Their population is 88% expat. And of the population, 59% come from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, like the Indian subcontinent. So, and then the other percentage is mixed, you know, from all over the world. But you see, it's very different. In Saudi, it's getting to that very open level. Saudi has a lot of initiatives in place, like the Vision 2030, which, you know, the goal is to attract more foreign investment, more expats to live there, to come for tourism. There's like mega projects in tourism that are being, you know, constructed as we speak. And so there's a lot going on in Saudi. It's changing rapidly. In the 4 years I was there, so many things changed. Women started to be able to drive in 2018 when I was there on my birthday, June 24th. It became legal for, yeah, it became legal for women to drive. And then open air concerts became a normal thing. Entertainment, open air entertainment started to become very normal. And so you can see that, you know, Saudi, they do maintain their strong values. And obviously we have to respect the Islamic values. At the same time, they're very welcoming to foreigners. So anyone who's ever going to work there should know that they will have an amazing experience. There are, I mean, apart from fantastic people, great environment, wonderful facilities, modern, high-tech, state-of-the-art, you know, facilities, but also like the food is amazing. You know, the work opportunities are amazing. I mean, my employer allowed me to, you know, move into different roles. Like, in fact, I was the one who suggested cross-cultural training when I arrived there. I was hired as a business English skills trainer. And then I noticed that they didn't have any cross-cultural. So I suggested it and I offered it. They accepted, you know, my proposal. And I started teaching that. That was fantastic. And then at a certain point, I wanted to try another job. And they allowed me and they gave me the training and they nurtured me in this role. And I am forever grateful for this experience. I mean, I'm so, you know, grateful, impressed, and just overall very positive about the experience of the Middle East. So I want to put that out there for anyone who has a fear of going there, that you can pretty much live out your life very similar to the way you live in your home country. And, of course, any place you live abroad enriches your life in countless ways.
Well said, well said. And I guess you probably just now debunked a lot of different misconceptions that people often have about Saudi Arabia, also UAE. And as you described, just the warm, rich, and also very modern kind of environment that they have to offer. So moving from that, you're currently based in Vicenza, Italy, right?
Yes.
So what are some then misconceptions that you've noticed people had about there?
Well, it's kind of funny about Italy. I hear this often. People say things like, "Oh, the life is so slow over there, isn't it?" Like, "Oh, you must be enjoying the slow pace of the lifestyle." Well, where I live, it's northeast Italy, and this is very fast moving place. I mean, the underlying Italian values are still here: family, socializing, getting together, enjoying life, being outside in nature is really important to the average Italian. But people work really hard here. This is one of the big industrial centers. We have quite a few industrial zones in this area. I live in the Veneto region, by the way. And the Veneto region is known for production of a lot of things. I mean, from clothing to shoes to, you name it, electronics. And, so people work a lot here. They work long days and long hours. And I think it's very different in the north to the south. Some Italians would say that, the north and the south are two different countries. And I would have to say that, yes, life is very different in the south. It's easier up here in the north to find work and to sort of have a different level of accountability among the people. I mean, I used to run a language school for many years over here. And people were very disciplined about coming to lessons, very serious about it, very reliable. And also because I kept a tight ship, I set expectations and I told them how, this is how it goes. You have to pay in advance. You have to show up on time. You have to cancel within 24 hours of the lesson. So I think as long as you set up certain expectations, then it's very easy to get people to adhere to certain rules. And this is a general thing that Americans think. They think that over here, I'm just sipping cappuccino in a cafe and I'm enjoying my life on the beach. No, it's not like that. I am working a lot and, it's cold here. So I'm not going to any beach, but, the winters are very cold. So anyway, those are the main things about Italy, the main misconceptions.
Great. That was actually a new lesson or learning for me because I also have the same idea that I kind of imagine Italy, and that's also like a mistake from my side for generalizing. But the idea
No.
is that Italy, I kind of find it more as like a laid back place where people are also more slow in their work or their life in general. But it's great to hear there's definitely different aspects in country, states, and even cities within countries. So thank you for pointing that out and
That's
adding
true.
that perspective.
Just to comment on what you said, I mean, these perceptions that you have or anybody has is not your fault. It's a fault of the sort of impression that we get from society and from the people around us that talk about, it's something that gets in our head from our environment. It's not because it's not your fault. Secondly, about Italy, I should emphasize that they are extremely flexible and they are laid back in certain ways. In other words, if there's a change in the plans or if something's not working out, Italians are absolutely brilliant at improvising in the moment, finding a solution and keeping a very level head about it, like not getting stressed out or not getting like angry. They're very flexible people, but they do work hard and they do work a lot of long hours. Also, here in the Northeast, we have a lot of professionals like accountants, architects, and people do their work with a lot of passion. And I can see that, I'm working with an architect right now on an apartment that I bought and I'm restructuring. I mean, he works with so much passion, and I know the guy works really long hours, but he's always happy. He's always, he always treats you nice. He's always happy to see you, and he'll take as much time as you need. anytime you want to talk about anything, he's available for you. This is the beautiful thing about Italians, is that they will never tell you I'm too busy, because for them, spending time with people is the priority and is the most important thing for them. Like, spending time with people is really important for Italians. So they're never going to tell you I'm too busy, I can't meet you. They're going to find a way to meet you and to accommodate whatever your requests are, or even just to have a chat.
100%. It's a more people's place, right? It's about
Yes.
relationships and having moments that matter.
It's a very relationship-oriented society.
Yes. 100%.
Yes, it's a relationship-oriented society.
Nice. Awesome. So my next kind of topic actually is going to third culture kids, TCKs.
Yes.
And as you probably already know, I am creating a platform and more or less a project for third culture kids in order for them to be able to voice their experiences growing up multicultural, but as well as for them to share their experiences for others who may not had the same experience of growing up with so many different diverse backgrounds. So kind of a community and an educational place. And so my question leads to, what do you actually know about TCKs? And my curiosity also is, did you know about TCKs before I explicitly kind of mentioned it? Because I know that a lot of people are actually not aware of the term, but know there are people who are multicultural generally.
Yes, I was aware of TCKs, and I had met many of them while living abroad, like my friends that have kids that were born abroad, or my friends that were married to someone else from a different country, and then they were a resident in a different country from their citizenship, and then they had kids. And so I met a lot of these kids throughout my career, and I always felt like they were the most worldly, like they had the most knowledge about the world, like more than other kids their age who maybe lived only in their home country their whole life. And they had a broader perspective of different types and more sort of acceptance of all different kinds of people. I mean, you name it, like not only in terms of culture, but in terms of other differences like disabilities or any other marginalized group. So I would say that in conclusion, I found that TCKs were probably the most sensitive in a good way, by the way, and empathetic and worldly with a broad perspective, more than other kids their age that had just grown up in one culture with one set of, standard cultural rules and practices. They had been exposed to a lot, and it just opens your mind a lot more. And it also teaches you how to adapt to different circumstances and environments throughout your lives. So I think that TCKs have this mindset that they can adapt to any environment and any type of culture or people that they work with.
Yes. I definitely feel kind of like personality aspects of this myself. Growing up as a third culture kid, I feel like we have the benefit of being delved into people and experiences that are very, very diverse, and that is a very, very positive. But also going on to the more disadvantage from my personal experience is that as TCKs, because we're confronted with so many different cultures at once, it's often that we have this identity crisis, and that we kind of feel often isolated and alone because around us, not many people also have the same background. So because raw culture right now is trying to use storytelling to help that and to connect third culture kids to have a sense of community and to share among each other the experiences and stories, how do you think storytelling might help TCKs with their identity?
So all of what you said is really true. And I have to admit that, yes, this could be a potential downfall, that maybe if kids have moved around in different countries, or they're not in the same culture that they sort of their origins are from, they may have difficulty understanding which one to identify with and which set of values they belong to. And they also may feel the lack or the problem that comes with disconnecting yourself. You know, let's say your parents are always moving from country to country throughout your life, then you might, you might start building relationships in a certain place. And then all of a sudden you're uprooted and have to go live in another place and make friends all over again. And it's a different language and a different culture. This can be also traumatic for some people. So yes, I definitely think that those can be difficulties for TCKs. However, I do agree that you're doing a wonderful job, by the way. And I do agree that storytelling is probably the best way to connect, because storytelling on a human level, I mean, storytelling is a technique that has been used since the dawn of mankind to pass on different, beliefs and different history of humankind from generation to generation. And it has always been the best way to also transmit different things to people, because our brain is wired to get attracted to a story. I mean, stories draw you in if they're told well and they're told right and they're used effectively. They draw you in, and you learn through the journey of the story itself. And that way you don't feel like you're studying or learning. You feel like you're enjoying, because storytelling is somehow, I mean, listening to a story is much more enjoyable than listening to lists of facts or something, and it's going to stick in your head. So the other reason why storytelling is so effective with TCKs is that when certain TCKs tell stories to other TCKs, they're going to realize that they're not the only one going through that difficulty, right? Because when they hear the story from someone else, it immediately puts your mind at ease, because when you know that you're not the only one, and when you know that others are going through the same difficulties, you can feel so much better about your own situation. And then you have someone else to talk to that has shared what you experienced. And just by creating that bridge and having someone to talk to who speaks your language and understands your difficulties, that's going to cause a lot of reduced anxiety and improve lifestyle, improve life for TCKs.
Yes. And talking about the powerful tool and medium of storytelling to transmit emotions, experiences, and feelings,
Yes.
what do you think interculturalists can learn from the stories that TCKs share about their cultural journeys?
Absolutely. I mean, cross-cultural trainers could really benefit by listening to TCKs tell their stories and by incorporating the same stories into their lessons. I mean, storytelling is the most effective tool for training. I've noticed this, throughout my whole time of being a trainer, that whenever I, insert a story into a lesson, everybody's listening to me. All of a sudden, if they were fidgeting or if they were, half paying attention, looking at their phone or something, when I tell the story, everything changes and they start listening. Their attention is there, And I think cross-cultural trainers could incorporate stories of TCKs, because it's a real raw, I mean, like your organization is called Raw Culture. It's a good name because it's a real and true firsthand experience. And I think that, kids, whether, that term could be relative to your, it could be that you're young or you're even, in your 20s, a kid can be a relative term, but TCKs can tell a lot of very honest, because kids normally tell stories from a very straightforward and honest point of view, like an uncorrupted point of view, right? I mean, kids have this tendency to say things in a very honest way that we learn something, like even small children, when they say certain things to you, it really makes you think, because their whole experience is not corrupted by years of, they're not jaded by anything. They're kind of unfiltered and uninhibited in a certain age frame, And so using their stories and hearing their honest opinions about it can really help other TCKs as well as cross-cultural trainers, definitely.
100%. Thank you for sharing that. And
My
we're actually
pleasure.
to our last question, and that is, what is one cultural story that has really impacted you in a, yeah, wait, let's reframe that. What is one cultural story that has impacted you to this day, which you would like to share with us today?
Well, it's very difficult to choose one story, so I might tell you more than one. Okay, so the overarching theme is one single theme, and maybe inside it I have three small stories. What always impresses me about culture and what makes me excited to live in another country and experience the culture is recognizing human kindness in different places and experiencing it. And knowing also that human kindness knows no barriers. So culture is not a barrier, language is not a barrier, and human kindness can transcend all of that. And I've had so many experiences of random foreigner, like random people when I was in a foreign country, just bending over backwards to help me. And I always, whenever I need like a boost, and I'm feeling down, I can refer back to those stories and I just smile, my whole heart smiles. So one of them was when I was in Korea. Actually, a couple of these happened when I was in Korea. So I wanted to teach a dance class. Okay, I had been teaching dance on the side and raising money for charity and donating all my earnings from dance teaching since 2007. Almost 100% of whatever I earned, I always donated to charity in all the different countries I lived in through teaching dance. And this was my personal hobby and, my personal platform. So when I got to Korea, Seoul, Korea, this was 2012, 13, the second time I was in Korea. I wanted to set up my dance class. So I went to the local gym where I was working in Gangnam, by the way, the Gangnam area of Seoul. And I asked the owner of the gym if I could teach my dance class in his gym. And the thing is, I had to ask if I could use his gym for free, because the idea is I'm donating for charity. So I didn't want to have to pay to rent the room, because then it's like it takes away some of the donations. I didn't want to, I wanted to just, like, I'm teaching for free. Can I also rent for free? And then everything I collect as payment is going to go to charity, right? It's a little bit of a complicated model, and people have to like trust you to know that you're actually doing that. What if I'm, collecting the money and keeping it for myself, right? But I went there with a friend who translated, because at that time I didn't speak Korean. By the end, I did speak enough Korean to have conversations, but at that time I was not speaking Korean yet. So I went with a translator, and she asked this, this guy I had never met. He's just a local gym owner in Seoul. And I just explained through my translating friend what I wanted to do. And to my amazement, he said yes. Okay. And not only did he say yes, he also gave me money every week for the charity I was donating to. So here we have a situation where a person who I don't speak their language, and also he didn't speak English, but it didn't matter, because somehow, like, through the translation, I transmitted the whole project and story, and and he trusted me, despite the fact I was a complete foreigner and stranger to him. He trusted me and let me do that in his gym for a whole year. And wow. With this person, I used to see him every time I came to teach the class. Twice a week, I used to come teach the class. Believe me, we could not communicate at all except for basic greetings. But there was so much kindness transmitted from this person. I still remember, and I still feel emotional talking about it, because I'm just flabbergasted by the amount of kindness and trust that can happen between complete strangers and complete foreigners when I'm in a foreign country, and they just say yes and let me use their gym for free. It's just incredible. So I had many experiences like that. Yeah. Another story also, let me think. I have several stories. Another one happened in Korea. I was doing corporate training for Samsung. Okay. And I did corporate training for many different multinationals: Hyundai, Samsung, Korean Air, Tupperware, eBay, a lot of companies in Korea. And somehow it came out in one of the lessons that I'm a vegetarian, or maybe we had dinner together. Like it's very common to go and have dinner together after a training session. And then, there's a big platters of food that everybody shares. And of course, I didn't eat any of the meat. So then people asked me, why don't you eat the meat? So I explained I'm a vegetarian, and I told them the reasons. And then one day after one of our sessions, a gentleman came up to me. Now he was, let's say the people I was teaching at that time were executives. So they were of a certain, level, like in seniority, and, they were of a certain age group. And one gentleman came up to me and said, and the rest of the students went away. And he said to me, Miss Cheryl, I just want to tell you that I'm like you. I said, what do you mean? He said, I'm also a vegetarian. He's like, I can't eat meat. And I was like, really? And he was like, yes, but please don't tell any of the other guys. He's like, because here in Korea, it wouldn't be understood or appreciated. And it's not sort of encouraged for people to have their own individual views, as a collective society. And, he's like, people would not understand, and it would have a lot of, animosity against me for this choice. So, and then he told me the story of why he was a vegetarian. He had a dog, and then the dog passed away, and he and his wife were like really sad. I still remember the story that he told me. Like he realized at that point that, like, dogs and cows and pigs and chickens and all the animals, they feel pain and they suffer. And from that moment, he stopped eating meat. And I had a similar, situation when I was a young kid that made me turn vegetarian. So the other thing, to answer your question, that amazed me, not only human kindness, like I was like the previous story, but also the fact that I was able to connect with people of a completely different description, an executive Korean man that I didn't know, and I didn't speak his language. We had something in common that created an amazing, bond between us as trainer student. So these kinds of things have always made me very, very happy.
Thank you very much, Cheryl, however, for this entire time and almost an hour that we spent together discussing about your cultural experiences and moments that made you feel connected to other people, and despite the cultural differences there are. So as always, thank you always very much for just pouring yourself into the story while you're telling us, and just being very generous with all your experiences. It's always a joy to discuss anything with you. So
always
right now
to talk to you too.
I want to give you the space to kind of share about your contact details for potential people who want to reach out to you. I will also share all the links in the comments as well, but you can just dictate it in case anybody might find this easier for them.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, sure. They can look in the description. Basically, I would recommend, if you want to learn more, you want to get in touch with me, I have a YouTube channel in which I give cultural lessons, like short videos of cultural lessons. And also you can follow my Facebook business page, Cheryl Obal and Associates. And I also have a group called Cross Cultural Business Network in Facebook that you can join. Also, if you're in LinkedIn, please do connect with me. I think LinkedIn is the best place to get in touch and build your network as far as cross-cultural trainers. And I look forward to talking to any of you. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm also on Instagram on same name, Cheryl Obal and Associates. So feel free to get in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much once again, Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Weirong. It's always a pleasure.
And have a good rest of the day.
You too. Bye. Thanks.